Good evening to everybody. Parshat Naso. I want to first of all thank David Fried for being Makdish the Zvad Torah. It's Le'ilu Nishmat, his father, Moshe Yitzchak ben Chaim Shlomo, and also to Le'ilu Nishmat, his mother, Malka bat Yehuda Lev Alevi. We want to thank you, David, always for your generous contributions and always for your efforts in donating things to the shul. We remember, for example, the gates with the Sukkah area, and Yiratzon that over here, this Hakdasha should be an Ilui for your parents in Gan Eden. We are in Parshat Naso. We read about the person and the laws, the institution of Nazarat, of being a Nazir, and as the pasuk says, the institution and Nazirut can be taken on by a man and a woman, or a woman. It makes no difference, and for that very reason, the Haftorah of Parshat Naso is also about a Nazir. That's the connection, and it describes the Nazirut of Shimshon, or the way that he was initiated and told, his parents were told by a malach, by an angel, that he's going to be a Nazir. But actually, Shimshon is, even though we look at him as someone who's a Nazir, he's in some ways a totally atypical Nazir. And what's the reason? I say this because if we look at all the laws concerning Nazirut, well, there's one single characteristic that unifies all the Isurim, the prohibitions of Nazirut. What is a Nazir? It's a person who takes upon himself a more aesthetic type of lifestyle because he wants to be more spiritual or whatever, and he's not allowed to have a wine and anything associated with wine. He's not allowed to cut his hair, and he's also not allowed to come into contact with the dead. Now, what is the common denominator between all these three Isurim is that they are all negative. They're all things that you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't do this. So the Nazir is someone who basically is a person who's like withdrawing, is withdrawing to a certain extent from the world, because he has got a restriction on drinking wine. So he can't go to a pub with everybody else. He has to watch where he's going. He can't go to a cemetery and come to comfort people at the cemetery. He's not allowed to cut his hair. So that already puts him sort of towards the side. And on the other hand, so that's a Nazir. And then, but you look at the personality of Shimshon, he is completely different. Shimshon, his whole life was active. He was a person who was a person who waged a guerrilla warfare between himself and the Philistines. He was a loner, and he did all sorts of very bizarre and very strange things in this war against the Philistines. He married a Philistine woman. He took doors of their cities and he broke them. He the whole time looked for pretext in order to kill them. So we see that Shimshon was actually the opposite of a normal Nazir. A normal Nazir is someone, as you say, is someone who's basically restricted and is therefore more inactive, whereas a person like Shimshon was totally active. And what also is so special about Shimshon, which is so relevant to our days, is that Shimshon took up the mantle. What he did was at a time that Bnei Yisrael had lost all form of, first of all, at the time of Shimshon, basically Medinat Yisrael or Eretz Yisrael was ruled by the Plishtim. I mean, it was like they had a certain like pockets of autonomy within the Plishtim, but I mean, Plishtim ruled Eretz Yisrael. And the Jewish people had lost every ounce, basically, of national pride. There was absolutely no national dignity whatsoever. So much so that in the Tanakh it tells us that Shimshon, when he was making the trouble for the Plishtim, so it says the men of Judah. Can you imagine? Judah, from whence David HaMelech, the tribe, is supposed to lead the Jewish people. They said to Shimshon, what, you're making all this trouble? And they wanted to hand over Shimshon to the Plishtim, which afterwards Shimshon agreed. So can you imagine how like a low can someone get that the tribe of Judah, what they did was they handed over Shimshon to the Philistines. And therefore, that's another reason why many Mefarshim say that he waged a guerrilla warfare, because he couldn't organize a revolt, he couldn't organize an army, because there was no one to fight with, because everyone had lost their will to fight, and there was absolutely no national pride, there was no national dignity, and therefore he had to do everything alone. So that's the greatness of Shimshon, which is a lesson to us during these times where it's as someone said, I wanted to give a special, a separate like shiur on this, but I just decided in the meantime not, that the war that, or the whatever everyone wants to exactly define it, some sort of intense skirmish that there was, and the terrible riots that we experienced within Israel. Not only is it a physical war, but it is the war between falsehood and between truth. And this is during this time where there's so much falsehood, just disseminated, number one, from enemies from without, and also from people within the Jewish people. So this is a battle of truth and between falsehood. So the inyan of Shimshon, the inyan of maintaining the national dignity and fighting for it, even when he's almost alone. This is a great source of inspiration, a lesson that all of us can learn from Shimshon HaGibor. So Shabbat Shalom Lekulchem.